Hello, everybody. Laziali all over the world. This is a very different podcast from our normal podcast because Alistair, Lazio didn't play this weekend, and it looks like he won't play for at least a couple of weeks, right? Because today, Malago announced that all sports activity in Italy are blocked till the 3rd of April. There's going to be the government who's going to uh, rectify this thing because on last Saturday they decided that all sports would be behind closed door, and now Malago, the president of CONI, decided to shut down sports pretty much for till the 3rd of April. So no football for us for a little bit.
No. Um, yeah, they're doing their best to make our podcast totally irrelevant. um, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth us coming back on again this week, despite the lack of Lazio to discuss this, because I mean, it is a situation that is developing all the time. Every day, not even every day, but almost every hour of every day, it seems to get more and more complicated, more ridiculous. Some of the situations over the weekend around the Parma Spal game, and then the blame game that followed that, with all the comments and statements being made, and the whole thing is just been a bit of a farce. So to be honest, I don't know about you, but for me, it's actually a little bit of a relief in a way to get some news that has got a sense of finality to it, where actually, okay, there's no football until the 3rd of April. Now we know that. We're not in a situation anymore where players are waiting in the tunnel to be told if they're actually going to play a game or not.
Yeah, you're Scottish, so you're not used to what happened this Saturday. But as an Italian, I'm very used to this. It's not my fault. He's to blame. You know, it's very common in Italian politics. So I wasn't surprised. Obviously, he signed the law on Saturday night, and then less than 24 hours later, he said, "Well, I expected Serie A to stop." So the thing of Parma was simply embarrassing, simply terrible. So uh, yeah, there are really no
It
words
was
to.
it was quite beautiful in a way, though, because it almost perfectly summed up the whole situation. You know, ever since this started, it's been dealt with so badly by the Italian football authorities and sports authorities that it's quite nice in a way to have a moment like that you can actually point to and say, this is what's been going on.
And the funny thing was that the day before, Serie B still played open doors, all fans at the stadium, etc. And uh, Damiano Tommasi saying players should go on strike without mentioning that Serie B Lega Pro was playing open doors. It was simply shows you how unfortunately there are a lot of people in Italian football, in Italian world, like that love to get publicity, free publicity in this bad situation because it's a bad situation. Now we said that football would be suspended till the 3rd of April. There is a chance that things can go on. If the situation in Italy don't improve but get worse, then there's a risk that it won't be 3rd of April. It could be, end of April, and things are gonna be really, really complicated for Italian football. So it's a weird season, I suggest. I think, Alistair, and it makes sense seeing Lazio on top of the table. Something strange had to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate. Obviously, we were really enjoying great season of football, but I mean, I don't know where you land on this. For me, I think that it is a situation, public health wise, that hasn't been taken seriously enough to begin with. The situation is kind of getting worse and worse every day here. Obviously, the government measures that were brought in over the weekend are the most extreme since World War II now. They've actually quarantined about a quarter of the country's population. And yeah, so when it gets to this stage, I think you have to listen to the advice that's being given out. I thought that the players' union made some good points. The problem was that they did obviously contradict what the government had said, and the government have contradicted themselves all along here. So you do need to protect the players. It's not fair to say to people in Italy, don't leave your houses, don't socialise, don't stand more than 1 meter away from somebody, and then lock down an entire region like Lombardy of that size, and then say, oh, it's fine for all these teams to travel around on buses together, go and play football matches behind closed doors. There's just no consistency in the message there. So I can understand why this measure's been taken. Yes, it's frustrating, but I think it's the right call.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not only Lombardy anymore. It's all Italy now to be locked down. So, Alistair, from tomorrow, you can go out only if you really have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by the way, Alistair, there is something I would say funny, but it's quite complicated because Malago said sports in Italy is blocked and specify even football. But there's the Champions League. Juventus is playing in Champions League. Roma, Inter are playing Europe League. Now, what's going to happen? Are they going to play away from Italy? People were suggesting Juventus could play Malta. Are they going to do what Inter did with the youth team that they didn't play and lost the match 3-0? I don't think Juventus will lose the match because they won't show up. But the problem is UEFA is in charge of European competition, and Italian Football Federation has no power to say, okay, let's postpone Champions League for a month. So it's going to be funny, right? Serie A is going to be stopped, but Juventus, Inter, and Roma could be playing, and Napoli, obviously, could be playing in the coming week. So this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of points worth flagging up about the statement that Conte made. One of which, like you say, is that they can only influence Italian competitions, not European competitions, but also that the suspension of the league is dependent on the government doing what they've told the government to do and issuing a new decree. The reason these closed doors games went ahead on the weekend is that the government decree that came out over the weekend said that they could. So they now need the government to issue a new decree saying that they can't do that anymore in order for this suspension to actually go ahead. So that should happen, but you just never know anymore. I mean, this situation. But yeah, it's bizarre that at the time of, I guess, a public health emergency, UEFA are still the ones who seemingly can make the call on things like this. You would expect that the European governing body would take advice from the governing bodies in the countries that they're talking about in terms of whether Turin is a safe place for Lyon to travel to, whether it's a place where they can play behind closed doors safely or not. But the problem is, all along for me, that nobody ever has really known the answers to these questions anyway, and everyone seems to be pretending that they can. But it would be a strange situation to have Champions League games, Europa League games going on and no Serie A. Again, the kind of lack of consistency there doesn't make any sense, and it only endangers players and staff when those measures from the Italian side were put in place in order to protect.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. Well, it never happened after the Second World War, so it's completely new for everybody, and yeah, it's gonna be really complicated to find a solution. As for teams, it's not gonna be easy to train in this month and be fit for when the league is gonna start again, because obviously this is the biggest problem for teams. This 1 month of stop. I don't know how they will be able to train normally, and how to keep the concentration and the form up for when the league is going to start again, if it's going to start again, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously come at a bad time. I mean, if we are going to talk about it from a Lazio perspective, the fact that they're on this massive winning run, that there's this momentum behind the team. last week, I guess, when the situation was that we'd had the calendar pushed back and we were supposed to be playing Atalanta in this coming weekend. You know, Lazio, quite a lot of our followers and so on seemed fairly pleased about the idea of having an extra week to, recover Acerbi, Maricic, Lulic has another week to try and get back to fitness, so on. But at this stage, I think we've got a bit too much recovery time, and it's almost, if and when the football does restart. By the way, I don't think there's any guarantees that it will restart on 3rd of April. I, to be honest, be quite surprised if they thought it was okay to open up the stadiums again at that point. But it's going to be like almost starting a new season, isn't it? Because it is, the length of break now is going to be like a pre-season, but without the friendly matches. So it's going to be new for everyone, a completely new challenge, and it's taken the wind out of Lazio's sails, but it's the same situation for everyone. So hopefully they're going to be able to do as well as they can to try and get as competitive a session as they can in training. But when they go and play the Primavera and put 8 goals past them, it's not looking good.
No. And the other problem is the calendar, because we are postponing the match till the 3rd of April, but let's not forget that the Olimpico will be busy in the last 2 weeks, because now it's not going to be the last 2 weeks, it's going to be the last 4, maybe 5, I don't know, because Euro's going to start. That's a big question mark, because we don't know what's going to happen, but there's this chance. So a lot of people are saying, what happens if Serie A doesn't finish? And this is a big question mark. And as usual, as this thing happens, you read a lot of different thoughts about that. The funny thing is that if you go and check the rules, there's nothing about it, because, obviously, when you make rules, you don't think, what happened if we have to suspend the tournament? So all those things that you read, that it's going to count the last table of the full fixture of Serie A played, it's fake. It's not real. It's not true. So if Serie A doesn't finish, they have to decide how to, decide who wins, who goes to the Champions League, and so on. So this is going to be really interesting. There have been a couple of options: playoff, or finishing, now, and who is on top with the Scudetto, the first 4 go to the Champions League, etc. Or the third one is to postpone and play when it's possible. But Alistair, there's a big problem here, because the contract of the players expired the 30th of June. So if you have to postpone matches and the Serie A finish, I don't know, the 10th of July, there are players without contract. Stefano Pioli contract expire. So, what happens in that case? There are so many question marks.
Yeah, I mean, the season has to finish before the 1st of July to be counted as this season. There's no other way around it. So, I mean, there's been a lot of people who want to know what could happen and what the possibilities are, but it really depends how long this goes on for. Like I say, I don't think that it's by any means a given that at the start of April things will get underway again. There's been talk about the Euros being pushed back by a year to 2021. Talk about Serie A next season being a 22-team league now, where the top 2 teams from Serie B are pushed up and nobody is relegated. That the championship wouldn't be awarded, and that everyone basically finishes the season in the place they're in now. So at least we would get that from it. But it's hard to tell when you're reading these things, these hypotheses, where they're really coming from. I mean, the league is going to be having to come up with disaster scenarios, but the situation changes massively depending on exactly when, what parts of the season you're talking about. I should say, like, just as I've been speaking, or while you were speaking, I should say, the Giuseppe Conte, the Prime Minister, has actually come out and said that they are stopping the football. So what I said earlier about the government needing to actually ratify that is now happening. So that's so yeah, 100% cancellation of football now. But yeah, I mean it's a strange situation, Vittorio, because I think in these 3 weeks coming up, that's pretty much all we're gonna get is lots of people talking and guessing up possible outcomes for the season and how it could look.
Yeah, absolutely. And they also have to think about the fixtures, because now they have to. You're dying. What happened?
I accidentally pressed the lever on my chair and it moved me down.
Okay. I thought the news about the Serie A stopping was too much for you.
Just slowly sinking to the ground in desperation.
The problem is there's gonna be so many matches to play. They're gonna play twice a week. I don't know. They have to organize also that. So they have a lot of things to decide. Also, as you were saying, what are we gonna do if we are not able to restart the 3rd of April? There are a lot of question marks, and obviously there is the Champions League and Europe League problem for those teams involved. That if they postpone those competition, then it would be impossible to play twice a week, because Juventus, Inter, etc. has even European competition. And let's not forget the Coppa Italia as well in the mix. I mean, it's gonna be a very complicated end of the season for Serie A. And yeah, who could think about that? I mean, this is unbelievable. And the thing is, Alistair, I think Italy is the first European nation to face this, and in the coming weeks, it will expand in Germany, France, Spain, etc. So maybe when the problem is solved in Italy, it will be still big in France or in Germany. And so what do you do with the Champions League? You wait that everything is solved, and so maybe this could drag you till August.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, it's as far as I'm aware, it's being projected that in the UK it's going to be, it's going to peak in the summer. So, I mean, if you think about that and how seriously the Italian authorities are having to react to the situation now, if there are other parts of Europe having to do that later on, then of course it affects the situation. I just cannot see how these Euros are going to go ahead. I mean, it's the worst possible time for the Euros to be celebrated by being played across several different countries at once. First time it's ever been done, and first time they've ever had to deal with a worldwide pandemic at the same time. So I just can't see how they could possibly allow it to go ahead unless there's some absolutely remarkable drop-off. I mean, I'm no expert. I'm in viruses. I'm no health expert, but I do know, I've read enough anyway to know that this isn't something that just goes away overnight and is very unlikely to be fixed by the summer.
Well, I hope in Italy it will, because we're seeing that in China it's dropping, but we have to see what happened in the rest of the Europe. And as you were mentioning, this is going to be the first and only, I think, Euros that will be played in 12 different nations, if I'm not wrong. So, it's going to be a nightmare to organize and check everything. So, yeah, I think it makes sense to postpone it, or they can organize it just in one nation, even though I don't think they have time enough to reorganize everything. So, yeah, it makes sense to postpone it. And yeah, we have to see what happens with the Champions League, etc. And obviously what happened with Serie A. They're gonna restart in April, March, June. I don't know when it's gonna happen. And the question mark is, what is Lazio gonna do? Will they still be playing like now, or they will struggle like they did at the beginning of the season?
Well, who knows? I mean, I think there is a lot to be said for momentum, and I just can't see how that possibly wouldn't affect this team. The fact that they were in a place where they just couldn't. they couldn't lose anymore. I mean, they had just forgotten how you lose, and were winning most of the time. Just such belief coursing through the team. Such great momentum from the crowd as well, from the way that relationship was being built. And yeah, I mean, like I say, I can't look at it in any other way other than it being like starting a new season. It kind of has to be looked at in that way. But then it might not be the end of the world. Obviously, you need to start fast, but we've got 12 games, and this is everything now. From now into the end of the season, and watching Juventus last night, they don't appear to be quite in the horrific crisis that everyone seemed to think they were after their performance against Lyon. And so, although that leaves us second in the table, it is a reminder that, yeah, maybe it's been overblown a little bit, that this was the perfect time. That this is when Juve are at their weakest. I'm not so sure about that, but
as I said, Juve was the favorite for the Scudetto, and it's funny to think that probably the best matches Juventus played this season were against Inter, because even at San Siro against them, they played probably the best match, and also last night they did. So I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe they are more focused when they play against Inter. I don't know, but as I said, Juventus is the favorite. They have a better team, and yeah, uh, obviously playing in closed doors changes a little bit things.
Very strange.
It's nice because you can hear the players. I thought that was great. But yeah, the atmosphere obviously is not the normal one, so it's not great.
Yeah, my one regret is it would have been actually quite interesting to see a Lazio game behind closed doors, to actually hear properly just quite how much talking Inzaghi is doing throughout the game, because you always see him there on the touchline for 90 minutes screaming at everybody, but if you can actually hear what he's saying, it would have been quite good viewing, probably more interesting than the football.
Yeah, and maybe he wouldn't lose the voice every time, because he shouldn't have to shout that much without fans, right? So that would be interesting as well. But yeah, the only interesting thing when a match is played closed door is that you can hear players, you can hear the goalkeeper calling the ball, the defenders calling the position, etc. So that's the most interesting thing. But it's a different football. Um, if the situation is better, would you agree that from the 3rd of April, the Serie A starts behind closed door, or would you wait to reopen the stadium?
Well, I mean, it's there's almost no point in saying, because it entirely depends on the situation at the time. Here in Rome, and also in other parts of the south of Italy and central Italy as well, the situation hasn't been that bad in terms of how many cases are appearing, how many deaths there have been, and so on. It is very much focused into a certain part of the country, but obviously the measures have been extended here as well, and so it makes you wonder, if that's happening, if it's happening nationwide. I think it's the right thing to do, but at the same time, it goes to show that they can't really risk having mass gatherings of people, having mass movement of people across the country to fill stadiums of 50, 60,000 people. It's a big risk, and in a month's time, less than a month's time, we're talking about 3 weeks away, until this deadline is at an end. There's just no way that the whole country is going to be cleared up by then. So I think if they are going to start playing again, it's very likely it'll be behind closed doors. But even in those cases, I think they're going to need to see quite a big decline, a drop off in the number of cases and so on, and I suppose get some sort of assurances that we're over the hump and on the way out of this, rather than still in the thick of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complicated situation, Alistair. It's really very difficult. Again, as we said at the beginning, we don't think that Italian government handled it well, but finally they took the decision, and can we say it's the correct decision?
Yeah, I think so. I said at the start, I think I do. Yeah, because I just think there needs to be consistency and a kind of clear message, and everyone needs to get behind it. And I have noticed that happening more in the country over the last few days, even here in Rome, where the risk isn't nearly as high. There haven't been as many people actually necessarily worried about getting the illness, but even here, you've got far fewer people in the streets, far fewer tourists around, and a lot of things being closed down. And I think that you really just have to, in moments like this, bow to the greater knowledge of others, I suppose, who understand how real the risk is. So, yeah, I think they had to do it, to be honest. We all love sports, so it's very hard to accept that it's the right decision, but I think it has to be.
Yeah, the other thing is the normal workers are still working. So, it's a little bizarre that football players have to stop while, bus drivers keep working, and they have contact with so many people as well in this day. So,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's one thing I noticed today is that you've got people in the shops, kind of working in shops, are all wearing face masks now and plastic gloves and so on, which is kind of a new thing that's been introduced since the weekend. I think restaurants and bars and places are kind of a bit divided on how seriously they take the 1 meter rule. You do find some who are trying to get you to stand in different sections when you're having your espresso at the bar or whatever. You also find some people who kind of take the piss a little bit, which is quite funny. There's a guy in Testaccio Market who was wearing a table around him that was 1 meter circumference, so around his stomach. So he was just walking around knocking into everyone with this table around him. And apparently people walking around with meter sticks and things like, and tape measures and things. So yeah, I mean, it does seem a bit ridiculous to say don't be 1 meter away from anyone else, but at the same time, I think they're just trying to send that message out as much as they can that we shouldn't be in close contact with people. So yeah, it's a really strange. I mean, I don't know what else to say apart from keep using the word strange, because I've never been in a situation like this before, and it's all anyone is talking about, and it is affecting everyone's lives. My girlfriend's a teacher, and now her school's shut, and she's having to work out how to teach through a laptop to the children and things like this, and everyone basically scrambling around trying to work out how to do their jobs. And now I've got a month without any football, so I'm going to have to work out how the hell I'm going to do my job as well.
hey, you have a little bit of holiday. Come on.
Yeah, perhaps. Holiday, self-isolation holiday isn't quite as good.
No, especially because the weather is not bad there, right?
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I think that's another hope people have been talking about as well, is that the more the weather improves and the sun comes out, the more likely this virus is to get killed off by the heat. So again, I can't say possibly how accurate that is, but it's something that people are talking about.
That doesn't sound very accurate, but it's like people that yesterday went to Ostia because the sea is healthy and this help you defeat the virus. So, people believe a lot of things. It's gonna be really curious to see what Inzaghi and his team will do in this month to keep the team up. We saw that Acerbi was back last week. Maruzic should be coming back this week. Maybe Lulic will come back before the Serie A resumes. So obviously on that side is positive for Lazio. The problem is keep up the form of players and don't let them get the virus, obviously, because that will be a huge problem. What happened if we say, okay, we stop till the 3rd of April, and then we find out that Ibrahimovic get the coronavirus? Will all Milan be, you know, blocked for 40 days? And what happened? The league restarts without AC Milan?
Yeah, well, I think it was Spadafora already said, the sports minister, that if a player contracts the virus, they shut the league down. So they do have a plan on that. So yeah, that would be typical timing if that happens. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like at least it's an opportunity to make the team unity even stronger than it already is, and that's been one of the strengths this season throughout the year. But you've already seen in the last week they've been out paintballing, having a good time, and a lot of kind of casual training matches, a few days off, and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard because this isn't preseason, so this isn't really a time to be, dedicating yourself to intense fitness work or detailed tactical drills or anything. This is really a time to just be playing games, because they know what they're doing. They know what the tactics are. They're at peak fitness. They need to maintain that. They need to somehow maintain that sharpness. But everyone's in the same boat here. So
Well, we have to see, because the problem is if Juventus, for example, can play the Champions League during this period, they will be able to play competitive match compared to the others that won't. So this could be an advantage if they play the Champions League, obviously. I don't know if this will happen. It sounds too weird to think that the Serie A is blocked and they still play Champions League and Europe League.
yeah. The other thing is, though, in terms of what Lazio can spend this time doing, something we've seen quite a lot of over the last week or so is reports of the club finally pulling their finger out and starting to look at some contract extensions, which for some people are fairly long overdue. I mean, Luis Alberto is a guy that I think has deserved a new deal for quite some time now. There's talk of him getting a new $3.5 million deal, which would be fantastic after the season he's had. Likewise, Simone Inzaghi has been talked about, and that's an important one because I would be amazed if he walked out in the summer. But let's not forget, I think his deal currently, despite only extending it last summer, is still only until next summer, until 2021 at the moment.
Yep.
So there's no guarantees.
No, and even Lulic and Parolo are close to the renewal. Now, I know a lot of our listeners are not very happy about that. I still think that both players provide good options. Experienced players that you know what you get. So Marco Barolo already this year has turned to be a bench player, someone that comes in when someone is missing. I think this summer will happen the same thing for Lulic. I hope we're going to sign someone really good on the left side. And I think these are all good news about renewing, especially Luis Alberto, but also Parolo and Lulic. These are, I think, a positive thing, especially if Lazio will play the Champions League. Because the problem now is the bench. Does Lazio have enough good players to play the Champions League?
Yeah, and it's also, I think, a case of keeping your leadership group together, because if you lose Parolo and Lulic at the same time, that's two quite big voices, two very experienced players going out of your team at once. I think Lulic definitely deserves another contract. He's the club captain, don't forget, and he is the first choice left wing back, no matter what people think about whether he's on the wane or not. Parolo, for me, isn't a player who I think really deserves an awful lot of game time anymore. But he is dependable still. And I think there's a lot to be said for having guys with the right attitude who you know what you're going to get from them as squad players and who offer something off the pitch. So the fact that he can be called upon in the dressing room as one of the most experienced players in this team who's been through a hell of a lot, I think he'll be willing by this stage to accept a reduced role as well. I don't think he's going to be going in there to the contract negotiations saying, right, I need to be a key player playing every single week. I want 3 million euros. I think he at this stage is wanting to retire at Lazio and will be happy to kind of take on that mentor kind of role to do so.
And I think, considering there's the Champions League as well, he'll play a lot if Lazio don't sign other midfielder this summer. I don't think that Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic can play on Wednesday and on Sunday. So there have to be some rotation there. So I think Parolo can be very useful. Another player that maybe can be useful is Andre Anderson, that, in this friendly match have shown his talent, scoring 5 goals against Primavera and a nice goal. I don't know if you saw it in the training during the week.
Oh, yes. So good. If any listeners haven't seen that, please go and find it. It's amazing.
He looks really a promising guy, The thing is, he came in at Brescia Lazio and he wasn't that good. But he's young. He's at first experience in Serie A. I think he'll need time. Is there an earthquake?
Things just keep getting worse and worse here.
Okay. I think he hasn't got the experience for Serie A, but he can be slowly introduced to that next year. Maybe he can become, the Vice Luis Alberto. He has talent. Maybe he's a little bit more trequartista than playmaker like Luis Alberto is now, but I think he can be a very good player for next season.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think he's far from being someone you could say is like a Vice Alberto, but he is probably the player with the most similar characteristics to Alberto, at least as a player in terms of his playing style. So I'm fairly confident that is what Inzaghi is going to look to him to become. Someone who can operate in that role. I know he's played him so far. The Cremonese game, he put him on in the front two and had him kind of playing in the number 10 role a little bit as well. And he did impress me in that match actually, but I did also get the feeling that he wanted to make it happen a bit too much. I think he forced it a little bit, and it's quite hard for that not to happen. If you're brought in a cup game against Serie B opposition, you're already winning 4-0, then of course you want to go and make a name for yourself. But he is an interesting player. I think one of the most promising prospects we've probably got there.
Yep, I totally agree. I think he's going to be really interesting. And the question at this point is, will Lazio keep him this summer or sending him on loan somewhere else? I think the right choice is to keep him, especially considering that with the Champions League, I think there's going to be chance for everybody. So, and after 1 year playing for Lazio, he will grow and have the experience to play in Serie A for a big team like Lazio. So he's going to be someone to watch this summer. I don't know, Alistair. Something...
You're running out of things to say now.
I have plenty, but I don't know if we wanted to talk about Giroud, about what he said this weekend about Lazio.
Yeah, sure. Can do, yeah. Why not? Yeah, I mean, find that quite interesting. It's that he spoke so openly about it. Obviously, he's been getting more games in the Chelsea team now, so maybe that makes him feel like he can actually speak a little bit more openly. But he said what the Inter interested him the most, but Lazio were also in there. So yeah, we don't want him then in that case.
He's the past already. Well,
I,
he said that he wants to sign a new contract with Chelsea. He feels now that he's a part of the team, and so his first thing would be to renew his contract. And I have to say, Alistair, I was happy this January if Lazio could sign Giroud, but moving to the summer, I would love a young player, much younger than Giroud. He's
yeah,
34. Lazio was offering 3 years contract. This would mean that when he's 37, sorry, he will still be under contract with Lazio for
yeah.
3.5 million euros. Now, maybe he's gonna be still high level at that age, but the chances are slim that this will happen. So,
No,
if I think we should go and sign a younger player if possible, rather than
yeah, and
Giroud.
the thing is, the fee is always going to be higher to get a younger player, and also you're not going to know what you're getting as much as you will with Giroud, who's by now, an established enough player that you know what you're going to get from him. But obviously, the salary will be lower, and I think generally Lazio's transfer policy is to get players on the way up rather on the way down. And when we have tried to buy players who are that kind of elder statesman role, it's not worked that it's not worked a few times. I mean, it's worked very well with the likes of Miroslav Klose and you could say Lucas Leiva. Lucas was only 30 when he arrived, though, so I don't think it's the same. But if you remember, kind of Luis Saha or Helder Postiga, or been a few attempts to get the best out of kind of big name players, Jibril Cisse, and it's just not worked out at all. I'm not saying Giroud is along the same lines as those guys, but I just think, like you say, for that amount of money, you're talking about him being on the same earnings as your biggest earners in the squad, like Immobile, Alberto, and so on, and then still have him on those earnings at 37 years old. It's quite a short-term view to things. It's more of a way that Inter that has Inter written all over it. To me, Antonio Conte's Inter written all over it, to join Ashley Young and the rest of them. But yeah, it's hard to say though, because I think what Lotito wants, what Tare wanted, was essentially to have a player who you can just sign and just throw him straight in the team, and you already know you're getting a certain level of performance from them. Perhaps the fact that we spent all that money on Dennis Favreau last summer, and now we can see that is going to take time. It's not that he's been a complete waste of money, he's been useless, but he is going to need time to become the player we want him to become for that money. And maybe with the Champions League coming up and no certainties about immediately getting back into the Champions League, having taken this long to get there, they just want to have more guarantees. And if they're able to sacrifice, potential to do that, then they might be happy.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, because Giroud said he wants to stay at Chelsea, and I'm absolutely fine with that, if I'm honest. I don't think Lazio will sign a youngster. Maybe, I hope, someone with international experience, but obviously more younger than a 34 years old striker. So I think Tare would be looking for someone else. So we're gonna see. There were the rumors of Depay. I don't believe it at all. But that would be the right age for a Lazio striker.
Very expensive though.
Yeah, and he's not a real central forward, so I don't think he fits with Lazio, to be honest.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's already got to that stage. It's almost like as soon as it gets to March and people start realizing that the season's coming to an end soon, there's just all sorts of rumors start getting thrown around. And I generally, to be honest, tend to not engage with them too much. And as soon as I saw that story, I thought that's one of those ones. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. Well, you have a stat this week?
Italy's in its worst quarantine lockdown since World War II. That's my stat.
Oh, wow. That's hard work.
I mean, no football means no stats. I'm afraid. I'm very sorry.
No worries, no worries. Thanks again for joining me, and be careful now in Rome. Don't go out. Be careful. 1 meter of contact distance. Okay. Wash your hands. I'm far away. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And to all you listeners, thanks always for following. Remember that we are on YouTube, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes. Rate and review the podcast. And remember, you can support us on patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at just $2 a month. Thank you, Alistair, and good night, everybody.